Let us remember that we are in the most holy presence of God in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Let me be the change I want to see. To do with strength and wisdom all that needs to be done, and become the hope that I can be. Set me free from my fears and hesitations. Grant me courage and humility. Give me the spirit to face the challenge and start the change I long to see. Today I start the change I want to see. Even if I'm not the light, I can be the spark in faith, service and communion. Let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins in me. Today I start the change I want to see. Even if I'm not the light, I can be the spark in faith, service and communion. Let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins in me. Live Jesus in our hearts forever.
Our Lasallian prayer. I will continue, O my God, to do all my actions for the love of you. Saint John Baptist de La Salle, pray for us. Saint Benilde Romanson, pray for us. Live Jesus in our hearts forever. So good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I am Lizelle from the Benildean Student Envoys, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. And I would like to give a special shout out to Best Buddies Philippines, Philippine Women's University, Treston International College, Philippine Normal University, Divine Word College of Calapan, De La Salle Green Hills, De La Salle College of St. Benilde, Manila, and Antipolo, and to all educators, parents, and students here today. Now, for our first speaker is Mr. Martin Cyrus Romero. Martin, or Sir Marts, as he is fondly called in Benilde, completed his bachelor's degree in educational psychology and has master units in Master of Arts in Counseling from De La Salle University, Manila. Sir Marts served as a research assistant at the Center for Learning and Performance Assessment before transferring to the Center of Inclusive Education last 2017. As learning support case manager, he handles case management of learners with special education needs by facilitating case conferences, planning, and learning support services. Now, in his 6th year at CIE, he is given the task to lead the Center for Inclusive Education as the OIC-Director, a post he started handling in May 2020. And now, let us all welcome Mr. Martin. Sir Martin?
Hello, good afternoon. Allow me to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen now? May I see a thumbs up reaction if you can see my screen? Okay. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, I am Sir Martin, currently the OIC-Director and one of the Learning Support Case Managers from Benilde Center for Inclusive Education, or CIE. Before I start my presentation, I would just like to formally welcome you guys, this afternoon. I do hope that you guys are first safe and well, and that you will learn a thing or two that you might be able to use in your current and future institution or company. Okay, so let's begin. So, sorry. Okay, so I'll start first with the goals. Actually, I have two goals that I want us to achieve, or at the very least answer. So what are these goals? First is how to be included, and the second one is how to be for all. All right, so let's answer the first question again, which is how to be included, or basically how are you going to be a part of a certain group, certain institutions, stuff like that, right? So basically, this question is about being inclusion versus exclusion, being in versus being out, and being part of being belong and not being part of something, right? So in order for you to be included and excluded, we need to take into consideration two factors. Okay, so what are these two factors? So basically, it's the uncontrolled and controlled factors. So basically, these are the things that we don't have any choice, and the things that we have a choice. So what could be a good example of an uncontrolled and controlled factor? So one good example of this one is race and favorite color. So for the uncontrolled factor, um, race is a good example because let's say if both of your parents are Asians, then most likely your race is going to be Asian because technically you don't have any choice because both of your parents are Asian. Do you get it? Then for the controlled factor, favorite color is a good example because technically you have the right and the freedom to choose your favorite color. No, for let's say in my case, my favorite color is green. So in a way, technically I have all the reasons, all the right to choose blue, red, yellow, orange as my favorite color. But no, I chose to pick green because that's my favorite color. Okay, so do you get it? Guys, maybe you guys have any other examples of an uncontrolled and controlled factor, so you can maximize the chat box for that one. So don't be shy. Let's see if you were able to get it. Okay, so however, these things, the uncontrolled and controlled factors. Yeah, Lawrence. Yeah, hobbies are sorry, Lawrence. May I know is hobbies part of the uncontrolled or the controlled one? Sige, before I continue. Okay, Carlos, interest as well. May I know if it's part of uncontrolled and control or controlled rather? But yeah, technically they're part now. I just want to know like which one from the two, like uncontrolled or controlled. So let me know, Lawrence and Carlos. Are you there, Lawrence and Carlos?
Yeah. Which one again?
Your answer, you answered hobbies, no? May I know like if it's part of the uncontrolled or controlled?
It's part of uncontrolled, clearly uncontrolled.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
It's clearly uncontrolled.
Hobbies, okay.
Yes,
Why is that? What makes it uncontrolled?
because you get to do whatever, you can pick any hobbies you wish, and then you can do whatever you want without any restrictions, boundaries whatsoever.
Okay. All right. Then I think Lawrence, that's more of a control because like what you said, that you can basically choose your own hobby. So again, the difference between an uncontrolled and controlled factor. Uncontrolled, in a way, you don't really have a choice. So let me go back to the previous slides here. technically you don't have any choice. You are born with it. Like for example, no race. Let's say again, if you're born to Asian parents, then most likely you're Asian. Okay, so that's again the difference between an uncontrolled and controlled factors. So Miss Irene here mentioned disability is uncontrolled. Yes, that is true. And skills, yes, it's a controlled factor because you have, the right, you have the choice to to learn new skills, to use your skills, something like that. Okay, sige, moving on. Again, these two factors, they're most likely the reasons for you to be included and excluded. However, but of course, we need to mind the context. So what do I mean by that? So for example, there are instances, regardless if you're on this, uncontrolled or controlled factor, there's a chance that you will be part of, you'll be included on certain context, but you will be excluded on certain context. So let me give you an example. So for example, let's talk about sports in the Philippines. So just the recent PBA finals between Ginebra and Bay Area Dragons. So let's say you're a big Ginebra fan. No? You couldn't watch the game live, so you decided, sige, I'll watch the game in a sports bar somewhere, no? But this sports bar is known for housing, Bay Area fans, diba? So there's a chance that you will feel excluded because most of the people there are, if not all, are Bay Area fans, no? So you'll feel excluded because you're the only Ginebra fan, so something like that. So, however, but if let's say you decided to go to a place wherein most of the people there are Ginebra fans, then of course you will feel included. So they get it. No, there are times that our inclusion and our inclusion and exclusion depend sometimes on the context. Okay, so now let's move on. Let me get back to the earlier question. No? So how to be included? So again, if you remember the two factors, the uncontrolled and controlled factor, though, it's not mutually exclusive. So instead of looking at it as uncontrolled and controlled factor, it looks like this: uncontrolled plus controlled factor, while of course minding the context. So how does this look like? For example, wheelchair user plus ramp. So the wheelchair user here, guys, is the uncontrolled factor. Okay, so of course now, as we know, some people with physical disabilities, no, they're born with it. No, they didn't have any choice, no, but to use a wheelchair to for them to move from one place to another, right? And then on the other hand, we have here ramp, which is a controlled factor because technically you can you can have the choice, no, to put on a ramp on certain places, like for example in schools, in the mall, right? You can put a ramp there. So now how does this make you included at the same time excluded? So siguro we can look at it as, if there's a presence of ramp, then most likely the wheelchair user will be able to move, from one place to another. Hence, the wheelchair user will be included, right? You get it? But if there's an absence of ramp, then it'll be harder for the wheelchair user to move in, let's say, in a mall, right? So most likely the wheelchair user will feel excluded, right? You get it? So yeah, I'll give you another example. Next is homosexuality and plus acceptance. So of course, the uncontrolled factor here is the homosexuality, and the controlled factor here is acceptance. So again, how does this situation make you included and at the same time excluded? So for example, if you're part of the LGBTQ plus A community and you want to join a certain group or club, but the club is not that accepting when it comes to people in the LGBT plus community, right? So of course you'll feel excluded. However, if you were able to find a group that's very accepting to people in the LGBT plus community, then of course you will feel included. You get it, guys? Again, one more example. This one's more, appropriate here in Benilde. So I'm sure, most of the students here, especially when we don't have the senior high school in Benilde yet, no. So most of the Frosh students here, if not all, came from different backgrounds, right? Different schools, stuff like that. So in a way, that's the uncontrolled factor because you didn't have any much of a choice that you'll be a new student in Benilde, right? So the control factor here is the friendliness. So of course, no, since you guys are all new in Benilde, and you want to be part of certain groups, it usually depends on the control factor, which is friendliness. Because if the group is accepting, if they're friendly enough to accept you to be part of their group, then you feel included, right? You get it? But again, if you notice your blockmates that they're not that friendly, then of course you will feel excluded. Okay, you get it, guys. Were you able to see the pattern? May I see the chat box if you were able to, or at least a reaction on your screens, if you were able to see the pattern? May I know, guys, if you're able to see the pattern? Okay, so yeah, there are some. Okay, sige. The pattern here, guys, is again uncontrolled plus controlled. Um, Basically, the choice is the deal breaker. So what do I mean by that? Basically, guys, inclusion is a choice. You can choose to include by doing something. Again, from my first example, just putting up ramps will help, people, wheelchair user to be included, right? Being accepting to the diversity of the community, you can make them feel included, right? So again, that's how we could say simple inclusion is for now. Inclusion is a choice. We have a choice to include. But siguro you guys are wondering, why bother? No? Why do we need to include? Why do you think so, guys? Why do you think? What could be the reason, no? For us to include or bother including, people? What do you think? Do you have any idea what could be the reason? Yeah, two words. Yeah, there's a clue by Sir Gemini. Two words. What could be the reason for this? Why include? Why bother including someone? Uh, that's correct. Actually, human rights. That's the reason for us to include someone. It's the right of every human being to be included. Okay, so now let's go to the next goal, which is how to be for all. Okay, so for those who aren't part of Benilde, just to give you a little heads up, that this one's a bit of a Benilde context. Maybe you can use this in a way when you start your inclusion journey, your current situation, in your current company again. So, but I would like to share with you the Benilde for All framework. So just a backstory about the Benilde for All framework. This framework is very Benildean, meaning it was made by Benildeans for Benildean. So it was actually formulated through a ground up approach, meaning all sectors had the say. So meaning from the students, professors, parents of the students, the staff, the associates. So everyone in a way had a say in making this framework. So let me share with you the inclusion statement of Benilde. So let me read it for you guys. Inspired by the Lasallian mission, we at the La Salle College of St. Benilde aspire to be a model of an inclusive community by upholding the dignity and rights of all persons. We promote the Benildean inclusion values of respect, solidarity, equity, and diversity in Benilde and the communities we serve by breaking the barriers towards the just and humane society. So it's quite long. But I would like you guys to focus on the things that were underlined, which are this one, inclusive community, dignity and rights of all, Benildean inclusion values, and breaking the barriers. So of course, the inclusive community, that's the goal of this. No? We want to have an inclusive community eventually. Next is the reason for for including people again towards human rights. Okay, so it's again it's every right of it's the right of everyone to feel to be included rather. Okay. Then later on, I'll be explaining the Benildean inclusion values and the barriers that we need to break in order to reach our goal to be an inclusive community. Okay, to siguro to further explain now the Benil for All framework, we have this diagram made by one of the students. So this one, okay. So as you can see, no, there's a person in the middle. So basically, that's the Benildean no, with the heart of inclusions up there. So there's a heart. Okay. So the Benildean is surrounded by the Benildean inclusion values, which are respect, solidarity, equity, and diversity, which should we use to break the barriers, which are governance, academic, and social. So again, if we were able to what do you call this, to break the barriers, we will be able to reach our goal as to be an inclusive environment. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about the Benildean inclusion values. First is respect. So of course, from the word itself, due regard or the thing that you treat someone how you want to be treated. Of course, you can also use this to honor the uniqueness of 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 an individual. Okay. Next is solidarity. So again, inclusion needs a lot of work. So the more people that are involved, the better. So again, no, it takes a village to raise a child. So better if we get more inclusion champions to reach our goal to be an inclusive institution. Okay. Next is equity, or basically leveling the playing field. Siguro to further explain this concept, I would like to give you another concept that is usually being used in the concept of inclusion, which is equality. No, so as you can see in the diagram, we have here three boys with different height. No, they wanted to watch the baseball game. However, sadly, no, there's a fence, so it's like a barrier for them to watch. No, since there's a fence, they were given each one a box, no, one box kasi nga equality, right? So equal sharing. So they have here one box each. Okay. So of course, no, since the first two are tall enough, so the box is already enough. However, the last one is a bit short. Sadly, one box is not enough for them. For him to watch the game. So now let's talk about equity. So how does equity work now? Here, okay. So again, equity is equaling the playing field. So for example, since the tall boy is already tall enough to watch the game with or without the box, he decided to give it to the one who needs it the most, which is the short one, the one the rightmost. Okay, so since he has two boxes already, now they can all enjoy the game. So that's how equity works, equaling the playing field. Okay, you get it, guys? However, of course, our goal here is to is inclusion, meaning we break the barrier so that we won't be needing any accommodation such as the box. Okay. Okay, so the last Benildean inclusion value that I want that I want to discuss with you guys is diversity. So basically, the appreciating the everyone's differences. So again, in Benilde, we have a lot of we're very diverse community in Benilde. So it's really nice to appreciate the uniqueness of individual. Okay, so again, the four things that I discussed, respect, solidarity, equity, and diversity. We can use this to break the barriers to inclusion. So, what are the barriers to inclusion? So, first on the list is governance. So, basically, it's how does the school being managed? Are the leaders inclusive enough, or they have the buy-in ba to to plan goals for our inclusion initiatives. No? Do they give support, such as resources? Again, resources, budget, really important in our journey in inclusion because it's not cheap to I guess you could say to achieve our inclusion goals. So it's really important to have support from the higher up. So that's why it could be a barrier to inclusion. Okay. Next is academic. So of course, at least in Benilde, since we're a higher education institution, we have different academic barriers, such as of course entrance exam. So right now we don't have it yet, but at least before, no, we can already filter students. So of course, it can be quite excluding, no, given that you need to pass the entrance exam. But of course, since again we're a higher education institution, we have to do it. We also have policies, so it could be a way for us to it could be a barrier to inclusion. Okay. Then the last barrier to inclusion is social. So okay, so as mentioned earlier, no, I'm a case manager in CIE by default. No, I'm a case manager in CIE. So I've handled students, a lot of students in Benilde who have specific learning needs, and most of their concerns actually are in the social, aside from of course academic. No, but they have a lot of social concerns uh, with themselves. No? So of course, no, so it can be a barrier to the social aspect because we have our own biases, our stigma, right? So maybe you have this kind of idea that there are that you feel like people with disabilities shouldn't be included, stuff like that. Diba? So maybe you can check you can check your own biases to reflect on it. Are you aware of it? Were you able to manage it, stuff like that? Because again, you can exclude because of your biases. Okay, so those are the three barriers to inclusion. So again, no, let me go back to the diagram that was shown earlier. So again, no, the one in the middle is the Benildean, and it's basically surrounded by the Benildean inclusion values that we can use to break the barriers so that we can reach our inclusion goal. Okay. So I've been saying Benildean inclusion. No? So maybe some of you guys are wondering, what's Benildean inclusion? So let me share you what's Benildean inclusion. So basically, it's the continuous effort of the Benildean community to break the barriers to inclusion by providing reasonable accommodations to the student, associates, and partners of the college while working towards Benilde's full potential for inclusion. So again, it's quite long, but I would like you guys to focus on the things that are underlined. First is continuous effort. So our inclusion journey requires a lot of work. It doesn't stop. I know we're moving already, but we're far away from it. So that's why we need all the effort, and we need to continue what we're doing in order again to reach our goals, to be an inclusive institution. Then of course, break the barriers to inclusion, like what I mentioned earlier. We can use all the Benildean inclusion values to make sure that we can be able to break the barriers to inclusion. And lastly, reasonable accommodations that I will discuss later on. Okay, so that what? No, I've been talking here for the past 20 minutes now. I've been saying a lot of things about inclusion, about Benildean inclusion. So siguro to summarize a little bit of it, basically, values versus barriers. Again, no, we have the choice. No, we have the values to basically break the barriers in order for us to include people. Okay. So again, a bit handful, medyo marami ba? I was able to discuss a lot of things, so it's a bit handful. But don't worry, we are here to help. We, meaning the Center for Inclusive Education. Okay, so to give you a little background about our center, let me share with you a short video about CIE. Okay, so let me just fix it. Okay.
Since its inception, the LaSalle College of St. Benilde has been in the forefront of inclusive education in the Philippines. Starting as a college that caters to the needs of working students and the Filipino deaf community, Benilde over the years opened its arms to different marginalized groups such as persons with disabilities and those with learning conditions. To formalize its efforts in supporting students with learning needs, the college established the Center for Inclusive Education in 2015.
It started out as something voluntary, and it grew to become an office to assist students with special learning needs, not just during the time that they were outside of class, but also to assist them inside the classroom by providing accommodations that would allow them to participate and engage in their classes. And also, there were inclusion advocacy activities like seminars and workshops for them to understand the different disabilities and what kind of values they needed to exhibit so that they would be able to support our students and make sure that they succeed in their college life. So the way that we define Benildean inclusion is the continuous effort of the Benildean community to break barriers. So it's not just an end goal or a result, but it's actually the journey and the process. It's about providing reasonable accommodations to everyone in the community, students, associates, and other partners of the college, so that we're able to work towards Benilde's full potential towards inclusion.
Since formalizing its inclusion efforts, the college has assisted around 200 students with specific learning needs and helped countless other members of the community.
Benilde has always been such a welcoming place to me. I've met so many amazing people there, so many great advisors and professors who have really helped my journey.
Being in Benilde and joining the Best Buddies organization under the Center for Inclusive Education really changed my life because they taught me that by the simple act of kindness, love, acceptance, and friendship that you extend towards everybody, we can slowly turn the world around and make it a better place.
The inclusion efforts of Benilde enable me to become an overall better person, not just a teacher for the sake of teaching. These invigorate in me greater responsibility and deepen my understanding of people.
I'm just really, really happy and fortunate to be part of a society or a community that gives such great importance to inclusivity.
After I graduate college, I plan on continuing to pursue my advocacy towards inclusion by using my knowledge as a multimedia art student to create materials and collaterals to help people of the world understand how they can be more inclusive.
There is also an evident increase of strength in the culture of inclusion in Benilde. This is seen in the growing number of students and employees who are becoming advocates for inclusion. All these are summed up by the current reputation of the college as one of the best inclusive higher education institutions in the Philippines.
One thing that I'm proud of with Benilde is that when we say we are inclusive, it means that we are inclusive from the time that you apply to us until the time that you get to graduate. And it is our hope that we're able to actually provide assistance even with placement for internships and also placement in employment. That's one thing that we hope other Lasallian schools will replicate, as well as other private higher education institutions in the Philippines and even the state universities and colleges. We're still hoping that in the future, Benildean inclusion will seep down to the very core of Benilde, that every person who is a Benildean, you will really be able to live out inclusion in every.
With each passing day, the college becomes closer to its goal of creating a just and humane society. This is possible through the continued efforts of the college as well as the undying support of the community. Without a doubt, inclusion is in the DNA of each Benildean. Indeed, we are Benildeans for all.
Okay. Thank you po, Ms. Nicky and Sir Lemon, for fixing it again. Allow me to share my screen again. Okay. All right. So, okay, now let's go back. So let me share with you the mission and vision of CIE. Says that we commit to the vision of a Benilde for all by working with the Benildean community and being service to its members as they reach their full potential in order to build just and humane society. Again, we're always here to our community. So if you have if you have any concerns, if you need help, no, we're just here. Because again, we're with you in this journey. So hopefully you guys are also into it so that we can reach our goals inclusion wise. All right. So for the mandates, we have 4 mandates. First, support students with learning needs. So far in CIE, at least in CIE, we're only supporting students with learning needs. I know I kept on saying inclusion, no, include everyone, stuff like that. Since it requires a lot of work, we're starting, with one population. And eventually, once we're able to be more established, we'll be able to add more, in our in the population that we support in Benilde. Next, provide reasonable accommodations to our students. So basically, that's the thing that we usually provide our students in terms of their academic and social concern. Build awareness and sensitivity to the community to make sure that we'll be able to learn more about the population that we're serving, to learn more about inclusion, right? And lastly, and guidelines on inclusion. For the units of our center, we have 3 units. So director's office, basically it's the one that leads the team to make sure to reach our goals inclusion wise. Second is the learning support unit. Basically, it's the unit that assists students with specific learning needs in Benilde. And lastly, inclusion advocacy unit. So it's the office that is tasked to promote the culture of inclusion in the community. Members, remember these names, these faces. No, as of right now, at least for this school year, I'm the OIC-Director. 2 heads for the learning support unit. It's Sir Cliff Chua under him, myself again, and Miss Camille. So the 3 of us, we're all case managers. So we basically again handle students with specific learning needs and assist them in their academic and social concerns. Okay. So for the inclusion and advocacy unit, we have here Sir Jeme Adriano. So he's the one tasked to again promote the culture of inclusion in the community. And lastly, for our operations assistant, we have here Miss Nani. All of them are here, so you can say hi to them later if ever they're there. Okay, so for the services, what are the usual services that we provide in CIE? So first for the students, first on the list is the case management. So this is the one that we basically help our students with their academic social concerns. Second one is the passages transition program. It's a way for us to help them skills wise. So it's like a module based program wherein we teach them skills that we feel like will help them we'll be able to help them in their journey in Benilde while they're in Benilde rather, and eventually once they move on after their graduation in Benilde. Also, we have here academic buddies program or the tutorial service. Basically, it's a way for us to help them academically. So we have tutorial here. Next is extracurricular activity, extracurricular student support, as mentioned earlier. Most of the concerns are in the social aspect. So We devised, programs that will help them gain friends, distress, stuff like that. Okay. For the community, we provide advising services. So if you have, if you're curious about researches about inclusion, your thesis, you can we provide service in that one. You can visit us and ask help. We can provide help rather. Then events, workshops, and trainings such as this one to make sure again that we promote the culture of inclusion in the community. Policy development, module development, and digital and printed publications. FYI lang guys, we have forms that you may use that are related to our office. First is the referral form. So if you suspect any student that you feel like has a learning need, we have referral forms that you can use so that we'll be able to assist them eventually. Also, the student accommodations form, this is the form that we usually provide our professors in Benilde so that they'll be able to be informed about certain student inside their classes. No, it consists of the basic information and the diagnosis and the approved reasonable accommodations that we provide to our students. You may contact us again. We're here for you guys if you have, if you feel like inclusion is it's a daunting task. No, don't worry. We're here to help you. Again, no, it takes a village to raise a child, so we need all the manpower. We need you guys to be here so that we can reach our goals. So you can contact us at cie@benilde.edu.ph. We also have an active Facebook page, so that's www.facebook.com/CIE Benilde. We're also other social media platforms, so you may follow us at here. You can just scan it. So I'll leave it here for now. You can scan it. So we have YouTube, we have Twitter, we have Instagram now. So again, you can follow these pages so that you'll be more updated. No, you can easily contact us. No, so there. So there, Sir Gemma posted the link, the chat box if you don't want to scan it. So you can click that one. Okay. And lastly, reference of my presentation. So again, that's it for my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening. I do hope that again you learned something that I wish you will be able to use it in your current and your future institution and company. Thank you guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir Martin, for that wonderful discussion. And thank you so much for that very comprehensive discussion on inclusion here within our Benildean community. Once again, thank you so much, Sir Mart. And now to introduce our next speaker, let me call on Miss Bea. Miss Bea?
Thank you, Azelle. Our second speaker is Miss Nicky Templo Perez. Maria Veronica Templo Perez, or Nicky as she is more commonly called, has been with De La Salle College of St. Benilde since 2001. She was the Dean of the School of the Deaf Education and Applied Studies from 2009 to 2018, and the Director of the St. Brother Jaime Hilario Institute, a training center that offers short courses for persons with disabilities from 2015 to 2018. She was also the Director of the College's Center of Inclusive Education from 2018 to 2021, and currently serves as Benilde's Vice President for Lasallian Mission and Student Life. Prior to working with Benilde, she served for 2 years as a Jesuit volunteer and was assigned to work with a street children's shelter in General Santos City, and then with a community-based rehabilitation program for persons with disabilities in Pili, Camarines Sur. Nicky graduated cum laude from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, with a degree in the Bachelor in Secondary Education, majoring in Special Education and Health Education. She then went on to earn a master's in Learning and Teaching from the De La Salle University. Up until recently, Nicky regularly worked with the deaf community and various news channels by providing sign language interpreting services during the coverage of national events like the Papal Visit, national election debates, and the Sonata of Presidents Aquino and Duterte. Let us welcome Ms. Nicky.
Thank you very much, Bea. All right. I just wanna know my copy. So if anyone can give me a thumbs up if my connection and audio connection is clear. I don't sound like a robot. Thank you, Carlos. Very, very helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I want also audience check. We are talking about the Benilde inclusion story, but I understand not all who are here are actually from Benilde, are not working or studying in Benilde. Just check who, if you can click the heart reacts if, oh no, naglalag daw ako. Sorry. All right, choppy. I will turn off my video. As much as I want to see everyone, I'll have to turn it off just so you get my parang the audio. Mas okay yata pag audio. I'm so sorry. I am currently doing this at AB4. Okay. And yun lang, medyo the AB4, sorry, the atrium pala, the new building of Benilde. And it's a challenge. Wi-Fi is a challenge for now. But we will get through. Hindi naman ako ang importante. Ang importante dito is the Benilde inclusion story. So going back to what I was saying earlier, I would like to see who among us here in this room are not affiliated with Benilde. Ayan na lang, no? Hindi connected sa Benilde. So can I have a heart react from those who are from other colleges and universities, other organizations, or maybe just a guest who's interested? We have 2 so far. We have Miss Gigi, Jan, Arno, Sudai. Okay. So we have 4 who are not or affiliated with Benilde. We have 1 more, so 5. May I ask you to place in the chat box where who you are affiliated with, or what organization you are affiliated with? What school are you from? What organization are you from? Yeah. If you can put in the chat box. Just so when I share our story, ayan, Divine Word College of Calapan. LSGH. Salamat yan. Para St. Joseph College of QC. Great. Sige. Maraming salamat. So that, ang daming taga, Divine Word. NTC. Okay. Good to know. Yan. So that when I share the story of Benilde, or Benilde the school, I can explain a little more of the context, no? Para hindi ako masyadong, I'll use the Benilde jargon, yung pala, hindi naman lahat, very familiar with all the ABCs that we have here in Benilde. Sige. Okay. I asked somebody to help me with the slides. Can you, next slide, please? Nung in February, we had a 1-week lockdown, or rather a 1-week suspension of classes brought about by the eruption of the Taal volcano. And that sort of or month later, when we all had to shelter in place, we all had to go on. Hello, sorry. Am I back? Back? Okay na? Yes, okay. Maraming salamat. Okay. Nag-change ako ng connection. Tingnan natin kung mas okay to, ha. Alright. So as I was saying, parang nung February na suspend yung classes dahil sa taal, pero practice pala yun for what would happen when we went on lockdown because of because of COVID. So that was from, if you all remember, from March 9. March 9, that was a Monday afternoon, all the way up to just recently when we opened our campuses again para makabalik tayo lahat sa campus natin sa Benilde. All right. Hold on. Okay. So how did we do? Kasi we were on lockdown, but how did we do, in terms of yung inclusion story natin dito sa Benilde? Sige, let's see. Can I ask for the next slide, please? Sana hindi choppy. Let me know pag choppy, chat nyo ako. Okay. We had several challenges while we were on lockdown in terms of inclusion. And then, I was talking to Jeremiah Adriano of CIE, and I was asking, should I be candid in sharing this? And he said yes, because this is the reality. This is what happened. So I will share it in the spirit of being vulnerable, and also in the spirit of learning, because everyone here needs to know how difficult it is to actually be inclusive, especially during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, Benilde was very much affected. And the effect was, we are right up to the pandemic, we were very, very strong ang Benilde kapag face-to-face. You will enjoy the experience of a face-to-face in Benilde pre-pandemic. And so when we went online, parang ang nahirapan kami. And inclusion also had its challenges. Choppy ulit, so I will stop the video. Okay. Parang hirap. Okay. What happened during the pandemic was, as with all other schools, we had to adjust. In terms of academics, yung aming support for students with special learning needs, hindi kami nahirapan because they were at home. And home for them, for most of them, was a safe place. And they had a lot of support given by their parents and their family members. Tapos meron din silang mga gadgets in place that actually helped them do better when we were doing things at home and online. But we found the challenges happening sa admissions. So admissions, why? We, in the 2 school years that followed, there was a decision to put on hold the entrance exams, the Benilde entrance exams. And because we did this, we did not see how well our students could really do in academics. Kasi walang Benilde entrance exam. We really had to depend on the documents that they submitted to us. And unfortunately, some of those documents were incomplete, which meant that kami as a Center for Inclusive Education at that time, hindi namin maibigay yung we could not give the proper support to students because we did not have a clear picture of what they needed in terms of support. Also, we would usually get information from the counselors. But during the pandemic, the time of the pandemic, the last 2 school years, we could not ask for recommendations anymore from the counselors because they themselves did not have much of an interaction with their students. The most that we would ask for was a good moral character reference. And unfortunately, that's not enough to let us know if a student has a particular learning need or a psycho-emotional need that we need, that kami as CIE or even other offices like the Benilde Wellbeing Center, our counselors, would need to support. And aside from that, we would also depend, as CIE, we would depend on the assessment, evaluation of developmental pediatricians or of education assessment specialists. But because everyone was on lockdown and it's very difficult to conduct assessments during the lockdown, we did not have updated records of our students. So that was a challenge because we were accepting students without knowing if they really truly needed support and what kind of support that they needed. Is it that they needed? And if we look at it now, ang nakikita namin now that we are slowly coming back face to face, ngayon pa lang namin nakikita yung landscape. How many students with special learning needs did we actually accept during the pandemic? How many of them declared that they needed assistance? And how many of them are struggling now and are only now telling our case managers and our counselors that they need help? So that was one challenge that came up. No? Another challenge is financial challenges. The school was hit hard by the pandemic and our enrollment lowered. Diba? We had less number of enrollees during the pandemic, and we had funders and donors who were also affected by the pandemic. And because they were affected, na-affect din kami. So one example is, if you were able to catch that kanina, si Bea in her introduction of me mentioned that from 2015 to 2018, I was the director of the St. Brother Jaime Hilario Institute, which is a training center for persons with disabilities. Later on, it was another director who took over, who's also from Benilde, Sir Levy Umali. But very recently, I believe just at the start of the school year, we had to close the institute because the funder who was giving us the money, the finances to run this institute had closed down. Or, sorry, they didn't close down, but they could not support us anymore. And at the same time, Benilde, from its own finances, could not support the institute. And in as much as we wanted to support this particular project, this particular program, because it's so very important, it provides skills and parang a means of employment for persons with disabilities. We couldn't do it. We couldn't support it kasi the reality is inclusion is expensive. And we need to make sure that when we enter into inclusive practices and programs, it's sustainable. That we don't, it's sustainable. That whatever happens, we will still be able to ensure that the program keeps on running. So yun. We also did face-to-face adjustments later on. No? Ito na ngayon yung bagong challenge that is arising na now that we are all coming back, ito na, face-to-face na ulit and the adjustments that we have had to make. Let me just go back. Aside from persons with disabilities and special learning needs, no, another group that another group na nahirapan during this time is our scholars. Kasi Benilde naman started out, the inclusion story of Benilde started out with financial scholars. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic and because of the financial concerns at the time, we had to, parang natamaan yung scholarships that we could offer, and we had to lessen the number of scholarships that we could give. In a way, it was good for us because it allowed us now to review which scholarships really were of importance, and who among our scholarship recipients could really needed the assistance, and who would really benefit from a Benildean education. Pero yung maganda naman si Benilde is that when the pandemic hit us, those who already had scholarships, we had the commitment to them that we would see them through until their graduation, and that was what we did. Yun nga, unfortunately, coming back, we are not able to offer as many scholarships now as we used to do pre-pandemic. So those are the challenges that we had to face. Okay, can I ask for the next slide, please? All right, but we also had parang milestones. We also had inclusion also had triumphs over during the pandemic. If it was mentioned, if you listen to the video kanina that Sir Martin shared, at that time I was still the director of CIE. That's why I was the director of CIE, so I was in the video. Ang na-mention ko, it is the hope of CIE that inclusion seeps down to every level, every corner of Benilde. And I believe that in a way that has happened. Parang unti-unti nangyayari siya. It started with making sure that our vision statement was very clear with that goal of inclusion. So if you look at our inclusion statement, it talks about poor and diversely gifted learners. It doesn't say inclusion outright, but it alludes to inclusion. Yun talaga yun, yung spirit na yun that in our vision mission, it says there, you see the spirit of inclusion and innovation in our vision mission. And because it's there, everyone who comes in knows that they are expected to be inclusive in values and in practice. And even our students, during their first year, they have a course called CSB Life. And in CSB Life, doon sila binibigyan ng module on inclusion. Yun. So binibigyan sila ng module on inclusion, and so what happened is, can we show the next slide? Next slide, please. Yan. So what happened is, if you see, these are the Benildean expressions of the Lasallian core values. All right, so yan siya. If you see in 2013, we had seven values, or rather Ben-X, ang tawag namin yan, Benildean expressions. We had God-centered with integrity, creative and innovative, socially responsible, appreciative of individual worth, professionally excellent, and one with the plight of the poor. Yung parang pinakamalapit na dyan sa inclusion ay appreciative of individual worth. Now, when we, in 2021, through the direction of the Brother President, si Brother Edmundo Fernandez, he asked the question, are the Benildean expressions of the Lasallian core values still the same as it was in 2013? And so there was a process, focus group discussions, surveys done by the group of, or the team of Sir Neil Parinas and Dr. Roxanne Ibalobor. and both of them work with Benilde. And during their interviews and in their FGBs and the surveys, a new set of Benildean expressions of the Lasallian core values, or BenXs, a new set came out. And in this new set, klarong-klaro na yung inclusion as a Benildean expression to the Lasallian core value. So basically, a Benildean value. So one of the questions asked kasi of the respondents, and this was from faculty, those who are working in the offices, and also our students. Which of the question was more or less which of the 2013 values still resonated with them, and if there were any values that they felt the Benilde community had pero was not expressed. So yun, lumabas ang inclusion as a Benilde value. And I think that's a win for us if it comes from the community na hindi na namin kailangang makulit, but it comes from the community that they recognize that inclusion is an inherent value among Benildians. Right, next slide please. Ayan, malapit na tayong matapos, promise. I'll try again to open my video ha. Let me know. Makulit lang ako. Kasi ang weird. I'm like talking to a blank screen. Let me know please kung magcha-choppy ulit ako. Gemma reminded me, culture building usually takes 5 years. And CIE started in 2016. The CIE is the Center for Inclusive Education. So we started in 2016, tapos yan na yung we were giving talks and workshops, and we were giving sessions with students, and we asked our academic extension program to include an inclusion module as be live subject for freshmen. So 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 2021. When the BenX came out, na merong inclusion na as a value. So it shows that in the 5 years from 2016, we were really able to build that culture of inclusion that we hope our students are able to bring outside. Not just here in Benilde, pero pagka-graduate, they're able to bring it with them to their companies and in their way of life. So yun ang Benilde culture building on inclusive culture building in Benilde. But now we are moving forward and we're going back to Benilde. Yan yung parang ito yung tagline namin the past year, back to Benilde. And so what does that mean for us now? What is Benildean inclusion moving forward? Next slide please. Is there a next slide? Next. Sorry. Balik ka na lang muna doon. Wala pala akong next slide. All right. So how does Benilde inclusion look like moving forward? We are actually putting the spotlight, parang nilalakihan natin yung spotlight. In the past, Benilde inclusion was about the disability sector, special learning needs, psycho-emotional needs, and it was about providing academic support and social interaction for these students. Now, mas malaki na doon ang ating nakikita sa moving forward, no? It's now about going back to the basics of Benilde inclusion, which was providing a safe space or creating safe spaces for all sectors in our community. And so this means, like for example, gender. Si Benilde, I'm not sure about my grammar here, but we are the first Catholic institution, Catholic college, educational institution that has an accredited LGBT organization, student organization. And I remember our former brother president, no, the question he was asked, parang he was telling me na, the question asked was, you're a Catholic institution, so why accredit an LGBT organization? And his answer was, because Catholic means inclusive. And, that's something that even our current Pope, si Pope Francis, is saying, that Catholic means inclusive. So we are widening inclusion to mean gender. We are also looking at how our spaces can be accommodating of religions other than Catholic. We are also looking at how we can provide support again to scholars, or to maybe increase the number of scholars that we are, the number of scholars that, or scholarships that we are offering. And as we emerge from our forced shelters, di ba, sa mga bahay-bahay natin, we emerge na the world is different from when the world is different from the time that we had to go on lockdown, di ba, stay at home. And things, sometimes may magagandang nangyari, meron ding mga hindi magagandang nangyari. But because the world is different, we can actually contribute to how we want to shape it. And we can say that we, as we talk about inclusion, it's about, and I will quote one of the interpreters who is here, si John Baliza. We were talking about this last night, and I'll quote him when he says na, inclusion is about finding common ground, an ecosystem where everyone benefits. And so that is where we will be moving forward towards when we talk about inclusion in Benilde. Na it's really about seeing how everyone can see the college as a safe space, both on site and online. Kasi yun naman talaga ang core natin. When we started inclusion, it was really providing a safe space for our students and our associates. And until now, that is still what we are moving towards, and that we hope we will be able to provide. And yun, that's it. That's what Benilde inclusion is. So baka magtatanong kayo, no, parang, why is the Vice President for Lasallian Mission and Student Life the one talking about inclusion moving forward? Because inclusion is not just the job of the Center for Inclusive Education. It's everyone's job. It's the whole community's job. And number two, it's because inclusion is part of the Lasallian mission. And it's a legitimate part of the Lasallian mission. And so we do what we can to ensure that Benilde, although the form and shape of Benilde has changed, the heart of it remains the same. Inclusion and innovation, faith, service, communion in mission, teaching minds, touching hearts, transforming lives, and reaching out to the least, the last, and the lost. So thank you very much. That was a very difficult session to give because of our internet challenges. But also, I'd like to thank those who are here. There are some familiar faces, pero meron ding mga bago na I did not expect to be here. So thank you all for coming.
Hi, Miss. So thank you very much, Miss Nicky, for that wonderful discussion. It was very insightful to realize what it takes to know what people need in terms of support and the importance of direct interaction with people with special learning needs to get to know what they really need to maximize their learning potential. And so we understand how the Benildean inclusion is definitely making a huge impact. So once again, thank you, Miss Nicky. With that, our audience is certainly burning with questions and are curious to know the answers to them. Now let me invite our facilitator, Mr. Jeremiah Adriana, Inclusion Advocacy Unit Head of the Center of Inclusive Education, for the question and answer session.
Bea, thank you very much. I would like to thank Miss Nicky and Sir Marks for their sharing. And siguro please do join me sa ating Q&A. I'm sure maraming tanong ang ating guests, no. Center meeting muna tayo. Sa mga hindi nakakaalam, no, magkaka-opisina kami dati before naging Vice President si Miss Nicky. So, yes, ganito kami buong pandemic, kaming tatlo, kasama sina Miss Nicky, Camila, at si Sir Cliff, nag-zoom. So yan, hi sa inyo. Again, thank you very much for discussing yung mga nabanggit niyo about Benildean inclusion and Benildean inclusion before and yung Benildean inclusion during the pandemic and moving forward. Sobrang malaking bagay na mas naintindihan natin at ng audience natin yung kung ano tayo, anong ginagawa natin. And para ma-apply din nila, kung Benildean sila, ma-apply nila yun sa ginagawa nila daily. And kung hindi naman sila taga Benilde, para ma-apply nila sa mga institution nila. So let me start with this question. No, marami na kayo nabanggit about Benildean inclusion. As inclusion champions, Miss Nicky and Sir Marks, kamusta ang personal inclusion story ninyo this past 2+ years? Surprise question yun. Ako yung nagtatanong.
Okay. Inclusion story the past 2 years now. It was, you could say, a bit challenging kasi of course, no, sobrang sanay ako dun sa setup before. Like, sobrang abrupt yung change from online to physical. So siguro medyo nahirapan ako in a way kasi it's in a way ang hirap mag-include online. I could say I think yun yung naging challenge ko. I also handle a student org, which is yung Best Buddies Benilde. It's an org that promotes friendship. So imagine mo tambay, you socialize with everyone. Ang hirap nun. Like actually last week or earlier this week, I had a catch-up session or meeting with some of my officers, and specifically told them na parang grabe, ang hirap mag-online kamustahan, tambay. Kasi before, you'll just go to our office, okay na, usap na tayo. Ngayon, kailangan mo pa iset, magsisend ka ng Zoom link, something like that. So it was hard. Yung naging inclusion, I guess, story ko in terms of that one. Kasi medyo nahirapan ako mag-include, honestly. Like, I'll be honest with you guys. It was a bit harder compared to in time before. However, of course, thankfully, medyo nag-improve na yung situation, bumabalik na ulit. So it in a way gave me some, yung na-feel ko nun before, so mas nagiging inclusive pa ako lalo ngayon. Mas kinakaya ko na siya gawa ng paraan, something like that. So yun.
Thank you, Sir Martin. Ms. Nicky, kayo po. Kamusta ang personal inclusion story nyo this past more than 2 years?
Oo. Di ba sabi nga natin, being inclusive is difficult. Aside pala from being expensive, it's also difficult. It doesn't come naturally to us. Kasi syempre, we gravitate towards people who are more like us. So, ang hirap, like sabi nga ni Martin, ang inclusion din kasi is also social interaction. So nahirapan ako doon, na burnout ako. Na parang gusto ko sabihin, i-exclude nyo na lang ako, sige kayo na lang dyan, exclude nyo na lang ako. Parang it felt that way. But also, I also became more mindful of how I was treating people, of how I became more mindful of the effort na ine-exert para lahat makasali. Pero yun din, no, hindi ko na-mention kanina, ang inclusion, sa totoo lang, in a perfect world, when we say inclusion, it means everybody. But we don't live in a perfect world. So sa totoong buhay, when we say inclusion, we actually define, inclusion is defining what we mean by all. And how big, I will quote teacher Therese Bustos when she said, how big is your all? Because we cannot include everyone. Si Benilde being a college, diba, tertiary institution, hindi tayo pwedeng tumanggap ng hindi nakagraduate ng high school, ng senior high school. Kasi ang kailangan natin, because we are a tertiary institution, is to accept those who have graduated from high school. And when we say inclusion, ang ginagawa na lang natin is to make sure that when we accept, we're able to give the support necessary for our students and associates to be able to fully participate in whatever we have, whatever activities we have. So yun yung one thing about inclusion, it doesn't mean everyone talaga. Pero pag sinabi mo, halika, sali ka, dapat siguraduhin mo makakalaro siya. Ha? Hindi pwede yung pampadami lang. So that's one. But yun, ang hirap, naging napakahirap. I became more cautious na nako, am I saying something that's going to hurt someone? Am I excluding someone if I do this? Pero napagod ako, nakakapagod maging constantly thinking about am I being inclusive? Because, and I will be honest, no, even if I was the Center for Inclusive Education, the director for the Center for Inclusive Education, inclusion did not come naturally. So I had to always be mindful. Who was I excluding? And I always had to fight against that. Yung ganong klaseng parang natural thing na parang ba something natural na lalabas sa'yo na, oh, ito lang para mas mabilis, para mas okay. Ito lang muna. I had to always constantly fight against that urge and to make sure that I was giving everyone an opportunity to participate and to be, to participate in the activities of the college.
Thank you, Miss Nicky. And gusto ko po yung na-highlight niyo na kahit na kayo yung Center Director ng CIE before, Center for Inclusive Education, umamin kayo na hindi naturally yung inclusion. And siguro, if I may add, ito yung parati kong binabanggit kapag nagbibigay ako ng sensitivity training. Lahat tayo may kanya-kanyang bias. And product tayo ng ating environment, kung paano tayo pinalaki, at yung kultura natin. No? So lagi kong sinasabi sa mga nagiging participant ng ng sensitivity training, we have to manage our biases. In reality, hindi natin talaga maaalis sila. Tao tayo eh. May bias at may bias tayo. But we can control them. So yun lang, gusto ko lang siya i-share kasi ang ganda po nang nabanggit ni Ms. Nicky, no? Baka meron dito na parang may internal conflict kasi iniisip nila, advocate ako, pero bakit ganito yung nararamdaman ko towards a certain group? Tao lang tayo lahat, no? And ang important, open tayo and we manage our biases. So, Miss, gusto kong parang laliman pa yung discussion about yung nabanggit ni Teacher Therese, no? Yung how big is our all? And sakto merong tanong siya ng isang nag-register. Up to what extent can we be inclusive? So, hanggang ano yung parameters natin sa pagiging inclusive?
It's always case to case. It's always case to case. Kung estudyante yan, the question is, when we accept a student, can we give the accommodations necessary na makakagraduate siya with the skills, na makakagraduate siya with the knowledge and the skills from us that will make them employable and real world ready. Okay, so if a particular student comes and makikita natin na yes, this one, we can get them from point A to point B. Application to graduation, kayang-kaya natin. Then, that, kasama yon sa inclusion parameters natin. And then if we talk to one person, another person, and then, eto, mahihirapan tayo. And we don't have the equipment. Let's say, kung kailangan ng equipment, no? We don't have the equipment, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the services para maitawid siya to graduation. Then, I think it's just fair to be honest with that student or that applicant and say na yung all namin doesn't necessarily, our all unfortunately does not include what disability you have or what learning need you have. Diba? So ganon. And it's not the person. It's not the person that we are saying na hindi natin tinatanggap. Ang sinasabi natin, hindi kami handa para suportahan ka sa mga pangangailangan mo. So we're not ready to support you. If it's So yun, that's one thing for the students. Another thing that I've realized, we haven't, apart from the deaf, we have not been as mindful in providing accommodations for our associates who might also need accommodation for inclusion. So yun yung something that needs to be looked into. We have some already in place, such as interpreters for our deaf colleagues, but hindi lang kasi deaf colleagues ang meron tayo. We have colleagues now with other disabilities. We have some with mental health concerns as well. So what policies do we have in place that will support them when they need it? That's something that still needs to be looked into. So in that case, hindi pa ganun kalaki yung ating net, yung ating all. Hindi pa ganun kalaki. Yun. Case, I can't really tell at this point. Kasi din, parang nag-shrink yung ating all dahil sa pandemya na na-discarrel talaga tayo. We were on a clear path and everyone was on board, but now parang and I will segue to Miss Vero's chat, na those who did not have psycho-emotional needs before the pandemic found themselves with anxiety and depression na wala naman dati. The pandemic, really, the lockdowns were a trigger. The going online were triggers, And is Benilde, the question kasi is Benilde developing more programs or doing more activities to address the growing mental health concerns with the students? Ms. Vero, what we do, BWC, talagang ratsyada ng all kinds of webinars. Kasi si webinar, yun lang yung kaya namin na maramihan. The counselors continue to provide telecounseling as teleconsults as well as face-to-face consults. They're already here on campus. So they are available and accessible should our students and associates need their assistance. Although wala pa tayong one counselor na dedicated to associates. Unfortunately, we're still on the lookout for that. But also, the reality for our counselors is that they are not as many as going into the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, their numbers, pre-pandemic and currently are parang kumonte, yung counselors natin. So they can also only do so much. What we are looking at is maybe coming up with tinitingnan namin kung kaya ba namin magpa-training ulit ng psychological first aid for associates. Just so, if we have students who need assistance right then and there, whether it's students or associates or kahit someone on the street, di ba, na naglalakad ka, nakita mo, nag-breakdown, gano'n. Yung alam mo kung anong gagawin, paano kakausapin, just to calm them down before you can get them to a professional. Kasi, yun nga, very, very few na lang ang counselors and tayo, swerte, we're in a school, so we have counselors, but can you imagine those who are no longer affiliated with educational institutions? They have to look for their own counselors or clinical psychologists for that matter. So, yun. Ms. Vero, if you have any suggestions, kwentuhan niyo ako. Usap tayo. Maganda rin yan.
Thank you po, Miss Nicky. Sir Marks, meron kang gustong idagdag with regards to kung paano tayo magde-define ng parameters ng ating inclusion.
Okay, just like to siguro reiterate na lang din yung answer ni Miss Nicky na very important yung resources, especially in Benilde, at least in Benilde. Again, I was able to mention it during my presentation. Inclusion requires a lot of work, requires a lot of manpower. So if you don't have, any of them, or at least konti lang, it'll be harder for us to include everyone. So parang we work with what we have. Sadly, yun nga, like what Miss Nicky mentioned, kumonte siya, or at least nahirapan tayo kasi kumonte yung resources. So medyo talaga naghahabol tayo ngayon to assist, to include again the Benildean, diba? So yun, kaya for me, especially for those who are not affiliated in Benilde, malaking factor po talaga ang resources in making your institution inclusive. I know mahirap po talaga. So kaya po yun po yung sad reality ng inclusion. That's why at least po parang like a heads up if in case talaga na we're going to that direction. So kaya po yan. So I think it will depend on the resources of the institution or even the company you're a part of.
Thank you, Sir Martin. Siguro to add siguro para dun sa tanong, and since na open up na, meron po ba kayong ma-share na parang specific na kwento, with of course without naming names, na Benilde had to say no para lang magkaroon ng context yung lalo na yung mga non-Benildians kung paano define ni Benilde yung all niya?
Okay, so siguro ako na lang mag-share na lang ako kasi earlier, di ba na-mention ko na kami in CIE were very, at least I know we're preaching inclusion, but at least in CIE yung mandate namin is in the students with specific learning needs. So ito po, kung hindi po ay familiar, these are the students with autism, with ADHD, who are blind or hard of hearing, those people po in that population. So of course, so it's like connected just to special education. So we've had cases before who applied in Benilde. Again po, nung pandemic po kasi nawalan po ng entrance exam ang Benilde. Actually, lahat naman po halos nawalan po ng entrance exam. So the admissions po of people with specific learning needs became very dependent in our assessments. So mga interviews po sila, series of interviews. So of course, yun nga po, doon po lumabas since hindi sila na-filter because of the entrance exam. we had to say no to some students kasi again, it will require a lot of work, no? A lot of accommodations. And again po, in Benilde po, we preach for reasonable accommodation. So if hindi na po siya reasonable, then it'll be not necessarily against, no, but it'll be hindi na po siya pasok dun sa direction namin of inclusion. So that's why we had to say no because yun yung magiging difficult yung magiging buhay na student, like what Miss Nicky mentioned. If papasukin ka namin as much as possible, papagraduatein ka namin, gagawin namin yung job namin, to make sure that you'll be able to graduate. So yun yung mga usual cases, at least from my personal experience, kasi siguro mas kami kita namin or mas na-experience namin yung ganun, lalo na sa people with specific learning needs. So yun sa akin, Sir James.
Thank you, Sir Martin. Pwede ko bang matanong, very briefly lang, no? Ano yung definition niyo ng reasonable accommodation? Kasi I think it's an important terminology dito sa Benilde na ginagamit in terms of inclusion.
Okay, so basically in Benilde, no, we don't provide special treatment. So parang yung reasonable lang talaga, like yung very simple things na you can get, no, to make sure that you'll be able to reach the standard set by your professor. So in Benilde also, we don't encourage our professors to lower the standards. So kaya po, we just provide reasonable accommodations. So siguro para mas mabigyan kayo, no, ano yung mga reasonable accommodations, from as simple as seating, appropriate seating. So for example, if you're someone with ADHD, you're easily distracted. So sige, we'll ask your professors to let you sit in front of the class. So that kind of accommodation, very reasonable, very simple, yet makakatulong yun sa students. So yun yung extended time, yung mga ganon, yung pagbigay ng notes ahead of time, rest periods, stuff like that. So very simple things that we provide to make sure that the students will be able to reach the standard set by the professor. So again, we try not to baby anyone in Benilde. No, we want them to be independent eventually. That's why we provide reasonable accommodation. So ganun siguro yung definition reasonable ng reasonable accommodation ng Benilde.
Pwede rin yung ginagamit sa Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities ng UN. Yun, actually very straightforward, and I think that's how we define it. That's also what we placed in our inclusion policy. So it's necessary accommodation. That's why every term nag-iiba ng accommodations ang binibigay ang case managers, because one kind of accommodation may be necessary this term, but next term maybe because the student has been able to do self-management, hindi mo na kailangan a particular accommodation. So one, it's necessary. Another is it's appropriate. So kailangan akma sa'yo, no? That's why also the accommodations given is not one size fits all. Iniisa-isa. Alam ko yung hirap ng case manager at saka ng counselor na iniisa-isahin niya yung accommodation na isusulat niya sa accommodation form ng estudyante, because it's not, just have one kind of form, print it out and give it to the teacher. It's really dependent on what is appropriate for the student. So it's necessary, it's appropriate, and this is the most important. It does not impose a disproportionate or unequal or undue burden to. So yun. If it is an accommodation that Benilde can give, diba? With some, maybe at sometimes it can be a bit uncomfortable for us, diba? Dahil hindi tayo sanay. Okay lang. We will give it. But if it's an undue burden, so example, we will need to buy some kind of equipment. We will need to install some kind of equipment in a room para sa person na yon. Or we will need to parang subscribe to many programs kasi marami siyang teacher eh. Example lang, software, ganun, na marami, na magiging napaka burdensome na for Benilde, then that is no longer reasonable accommodation. Hihindi na tayo doon. So yun.
Nabanggit po ni Ms. Nicky yung self-management ng student. So, siguro part din ng mga reasonable things that we provide na yung pagbigay ng mga passages as mentioned earlier, yung skills, yung skill building ng mga students. So, yun, in a way, nakakatulong din yun sa kanila. In order for them to eventually, hindi na kailanganin yung mga accommodations that Benilde provides to its students.
Yan, thank you, Ms. Nicky at saka Sir Mark. Sakto, nabanggit niyo yun, no, yung reasonable accommodation, clarifying and emphasizing na hindi natin binibaby ang students natin. Sakto kasi may nagtanong about related to that. No? Ang tanong niya ay, how does inclusion work for teachers who are fixed with the standards set by their school? Kumbaga, sige ba?
By standard. Sige nga.
Yes.
Sige.
Yun lang yung tanong yun lang yung tanong na natanong, pero I believe it's related to to what you said earlier, Sir Mark at saka Miss Nicky, na may standards sa school eh. Kumbaga, ang passing grade ay 70%.
Yes.
Paano tayo magiging inclusive? And it's a question na parating nire-raise about inclusive education. Anong masasabi niyo po tungkol doon?
No, yung sinasabi naman namin is it's not the requirement that you change. It's the strategy in teaching or maybe the mode of delivery of yung ganun, no? So okay, an example would be for the deaf. Kasi ako I teach sa SDEA, sa School of Deaf Education and Applied Studies. So when CSB Life, yun na lang, yung subject na CSB Life, I teach hearing and deaf students CSB Life. I have the same learning objectives for them, but it does not mean that I will give the same activities or I will even deliver the lecture the same way. Okay? But the point is, kailangan for both sector, for both groups, kailangan ma-meet nila yung learning objectives ng class. Nag-make sense ba yun?
Yes, Miss. Thank you for sharing that, no? And clarify lang na same objective, possibly different modality kung paano sukatin or paano i-deliver, no? Sir Martin, kayo po ba ay merong kumbaga comment dito or mababanggit? I'm sure madalas niyo tong ma-encounter given na kayo yung mainly nakikipag-usap sa mga professor, no? Lalo na kapag may case conference or meeting between the student, the professor, and the parents.
Okay, well, yung first na like na mention sa kanila is yun yan, no? As much as possible, talaga never lower your standards kasi syempre if that is the standard of the school that you're part of, then yun talaga yun. Yun nga, like what Miss Nicky mentioned, you can do other things, no? You can change maybe the way you teach, no? You can siguro accommodate, no, adding like 5 or 10 minute kamustahan before and after every class, no? Makakatulong yun. Let's say lang walang CAE programs sa institution, so of course na medyo mahirap, no? Kasi at least in Benilde, through the reasonable accommodations na pwedeng i-provide sana, syempre makakatulong yun in a way. So siguro kasi parang you'll have a concrete program for that one. Makakatulong talaga yun. But let's say if wala na. So para medyo magkakaroon ng adjustment for the teacher, no. So dito papasok yung pagiging human natin, yung puso natin, no, sa pagtuturo para sa mga estudyante natin. So malaking factor po 'yun if that's the case, no. But ako talaga feeling ko lang strict rin kasi talaga ako. So I feel like never po talaga ideally bababaan po ang ating standards, because at the end of the day, no, once the student graduates, magiging part siya ng alumni ng school na yon, pag nalaman like yung teacher yung dumaan sa'yo, something like that. So and as much as possible, no, we're not really helping the student if we lower the standard. So para rin naman po sa kanila to, but yun nga, we need to guide them, siguro extra effort lang, extra things lang talaga na pwedeng ibigay sa kanila, lalo na if wala pang program. But yun nga, if may program, you maximize it, you contact the office, if regardless let's say whether it from CIE or BWC, you contact them kasi baka meron naman mapoprovide sa'yo na parang i-apply mo na lang to help them, no, achieve yung goal na sinet mo sa class.
Thank you, Sir
Si Miss
Martin.
Vero, sabihan ko lang kasi si Miss Vero may chinat na yung accommodation ba, yung excusing a student in class in doing certain projects when the rest of the class have to submit. So kung ano yung sinasubmit nung class na project, kailangan ipag-submit mo rin yung student. But the question lang is, yung project na yon, does it have to be in the same form? So if you are requiring your students to submit a creative output and you have a student in your class who is on the autism spectrum, and yung manifestation or one of the manifestations of ASD sa kanya ay hindi talaga siya creative. Wala siyang emotion, hindi siya emotional na tao, hindi siya creative. Is there can you require something else aside from a creative output to measure whatever it is that you're still measuring with the subject? Baka kung sa iba creative song, dance, ganyan siya, paggawa mo ng essay, kasi baka siya talaga pag essay kaya, wag mo na siyang paggawa ng tula, pero essay kaya niya. Parang ganun po.
Sige po, continue, Miss Nicky.
Oh. And then tapos si Sir Ronald naman. Hi Sir Ronald, matagal ko nang hindi nakikita si Sir Ronald. Yung naglagay siya ng definition ng inclusion from the United Nations. Sir, hindi yan ang gamit natin. Parang hindi yan ang gamit natin na that's not the definition that we are using. Kaya that's why we have a document with our own definition of inclusion. Kasi ang inclusion, ano talaga, pag tinanggap mo ang estudyante, itatapat mo siya sa age level niya. Parang pare-pareho sila ng age, dapat ipapasok mo siya sa class with the same age as they are, but even if they don't have the same level of competence or of the same level of achievement, basta dapat pareho sila ng edad. Tas tumbling na lang si teacher. Hindi natin kaya yon kasi nga tertiary. I know some basic ed institutions, especially in the US, will do that. Pero tayo, we don't do that. We cannot do that.
Thank you po, Ms. Nicky, for the clarification and Sir Marts sa mga nabanggit ninyo. Siguro if I may add, no, yung nabanggit ni Ms. Nicky at saka ni Sir Martin regarding sa pagpalit ng modality, kung paano susukatin yung isang skill. I would like to share yung CSB Life natin, yung module natin ni Benilde, meron siyang, again, nabanggit ni Ms. Nicky to earlier. Si Benilde meron siyang CSB Life, para siyang, ano bang tawag dito, personal development class para for non-Benildians, no? Ayun yung subject na yon. Tapos isa sa mga module is about Benildian inclusion. After that module, meron si student na expected output. ang sinusukat doon or the idea of that outpost is to check whether na-gets ni student yung Benildean inclusion. Ano ba ang Benildean inclusion? Paano maging sensitive, etc. So, ang sinuggest namin ni CIE na tumulong gumawa ng module na yun, ang sinuggest naming output ay kahit ano na ma-express ni student yung learnings niya. So, that means, siya bahala if gusto niya ng tula, gusto niya ng digital media na art or traditional art. And maraming nagpasa na magagandang inclusion-related output. So yun lang, share ko lang yun. No? Tapos, siguro ano na rin, since yun nga, hindi lahat dito ay taga Benilde. Siguro clarification na rin, nababanggit namin kanina ang BWC. So, para lang sa lahat, that's Benilde Wellbeing Center. Ayun yung branding ng counseling services namin. So, counselor sila. And yun, gusto ko lang i-add din, if I may, add ko lang yung nabanggit ni Sir Martin about pagbibaby ng mga estudyante, no? Disservice, isa siyang malaking disservice sa bata, sa estudyante. I'm talking to you teachers, no? Kung sa tingin ninyo nakakatulong kayo kapag binibaby niyo yung estudyante na may learning need, or kung hindi man learning need, merong problema, kung ano man yun, disservice siya sa totoo lang. Kasi kapag graduate yan, at hindi niya fully naintindihan yung lesson, siya yung maiipit. So, yun nga, I think ma-vouch ako nila Sir Martin and Miss Nicky na may mga bumabaksak pa rin na students under our care. Pero tumutulong pa rin kami. Tumutulong pa rin sa CIE. So yun, gusto ko lang i-add dun sa discussion. Thank you, Miss Nicky and Sir Martin once again. Follow-up question or additional question na related dun, no? How do you sustain the culture of inclusion in school communities? Please cite specific, doable, and sustainable program.
Siguro malaking factor dun yung planning. Share ko na lang po siguro yung at least what we do po in CIE. So before po the school year ends, we usually talagang try to map out all the things that we need to do come next school year. So para po na-make sure namin na tuloy-tuloy po yung program and na for example, mabibigyan pa rin, matutuloy ba yung pag-broaden ng culture of inclusion. So siguro ano po yun. So for example, sa amin po sa learning, sa student unit, nakaset na po yung mga activities, yung mga social activities namin, naka-line up na po yun. Kumbaga yung actual date na lang po yung hinihintay namin. But let's say yung month, nakaset na po yun. For example, Inclusion Week, nakaset na yan ng March, yung mga ganun, special prom, nakaset na yan ng April, yung mga ganun po ba, yung mga Halloween party, yung mga ganun kasimpleng mga bagay. No? Kasi again, you need to look at yung ano yung tina-target nyo. So let's say sa amin po sa student unit, we target din po kasi yung social constraints. So yun po isa sa tinitake into consideration po namin when we plan out things. Kaya malaking factor po yung planning. So let's say, i-share ko na lang din po yung kay Sir Jemai, we discuss po yung mga topics po ng webinar. So as you eventually, no, if you've been attending our webinars po, lahat yan nakaset na even before pa po yung school year mag-start. So malaking factor po talaga yung planning. You need to look at yung mga tatargetin nyo, like yung mga topics na gusto nyo i-discuss, yung mga current problem, because like what happened during the pandemic, so we had to adjust. So medyo kailangan nyo rin bigyan yung sarili niya ng freedom to adjust kasi you'll never know ano yung mga biglang papasok na concern kasi yun yung di naman naging problem nung before pandemic, pero kasi parang ang grabe yung naging, kumbaga malaking problem kasi yung pandemic. Hindi ko rin masabi na bigla siya na talagang naka-cause siya kasi talaga ang laki niya. Sa sobrang laki ng problem na yan, we had to adjust talaga kasi kahit nakaset ka mga plans, you try to make sure na magkakaroon ka ng, in a way, kaya mo po ang umadjust no, para maglagay pa ng certain topics na kailangan i-discuss. Kung rin na-raise to, sige, ito gawan natin ng program. So yun po at least po yung ganun po sa CI. Malaking factor po talaga ang planning before the start of the school year.
Thank you, Sir Martin. Miss Nicky, kayo po, meron kayong ma-share about this one?
Sorry, read it
Sige po.
again.
Asan ba tayo? How do you sustain the culture of inclusion in school communities? Site-specific, doable, and sustainable program.
Una, nasa vision mission siya. So, magbago man ang lahat ng administrators at mga nagtatrabaho in a school in Benilde, it's in the vision mission. So napakalaking bagay nun. Kasi masusustain mo talaga yun, yung culture of inclusion. Kasi you ensure that when we do strategic planning, like what Martin said, iisipin ng lahat yung inclusion and innovation. Kasi those are the two things that are in our vision mission. That's one. Another is, if you have, it really helps to have a center for inclusive education. Or kahit hindi center, kahit unit, parang ganun, no? Kahit unit. Because, like in LSGH, it's not a center, it's a unit, I believe. And right now, what they do is more of student support. Pero eventually, the student support, kasi mabigat yun na trabaho eh. But if you can work towards advocacy also within the school, coming up with advocacy programs which take the form of awareness, mga awareness activities, lectures, and seminars. Kahit on all kinds of disabilities muna, yun muna. All kinds of learning disabilities or all kinds of strategies for teaching strategies. Kahit ganun ka-exact yung ibibigay. In a way, it helps keep the culture there. Kasi top of mind ng mga tao. And there's a center that is making sure that people remember that inclusion is important to us. Yung lagi kong sinasabi, hopefully one day we can close the Center for Inclusive Education because it's inherent in all the programs of the school and in everyone. It's not gonna happen in my lifetime. I don't think it will happen kasi medyo matanda na ako. But at least in si Gemma medyo bata-bata pa, si Martin medyo bata-bata pa. It's not going to happen within their lifetime here in Benilde. Meaning, pagka nag-retire yung mga yan, kailangan may center for inclusive education pa rin. Kasi you need, kahit paano at the start, you need an office, a unit, maybe a person, just one person, who will monitor and check yung kung gaano ka-inclusive pa ba yung school, and maybe even come up with the activities, plan the activities para magkaroon siya, para yung mabigyan ng awareness ng information yung mga tao in a particular school. Yun sa ngayon yun ang naiisip ko na way of sustaining. Yun nga kami, swerte na lang na pre-pandemic, we were able to discuss on so many levels with different sectors yung inclusion. Kaya talagang we saw that it became part of the consciousness of people that they mention it as a value, as a Benildean value. So, swerte na lang, di ba? But yun, it's going to take a while, and you're going to need someone na nakatutok talaga in terms of inclusion. If I can just answer first the question that was also posted by Ms. Gigi, na if a student has a specific learning disability, do we provide therapy in-house or do we refer to therapists or specialists outside CSB? So Ms. Gigi, Benilde's mandate is to assist the students when they are with us for their classes and for socialization. No? So yung therapy happens outside. We usually when the students come to us, meron na silang therapists. But if they need therapists, I believe Sina Martin and Gemma have access to a directory. So they can, or at least they have information on a number of therapists. So nakakapag-refer sila na pwedeng dito pumunta, pwedeng dyan pumunta. Pero kung hindi kaya yung therapist, we have the case managers also do tutoring, class tutoring. And then we have scholars. Dati, no, they would provide tutoring also to their peers. And yung best buddies namin, kapag kaya, and we're able to match them with someone from the same course, yun yung nagbibigay ng tutoring. Pero for a specific subject. Therapy, we don't provide. And then the question by Lawrence Tan is, CIE going to expand beyond Benilde? No, we will not expand beyond Benilde because CIE, the Center for Inclusive Education of Benilde, the mandate is to serve only within Benilde. Benildean students and Benildean associates and partners. Like those from other Lasallian schools, we can give tips or we can discuss how they can set up their own anong tawag dito? Yung sarili nilang parang CIE.
If I may add lang po, like what Miss Nicky mentioned about the specialist and therapist po outside Benilde. Wala naman po kaming like official partners na mga therapists. But dahil po sa parang sila na rin po yung nagma-market sa Benilde, so parang kilala na po nila yung Benilde. So in a way, it's like we can refer doctors po, therapists po, centers to those who are in need. Kasi sila na po yung talagang mga nag-handle na po ng mga students before pa pumasok ng Benilde. So yun po, if ever po, Ms. G, you can contact Sir Gemma. He has the directory po kasi siya yung nakatoka ng start po ng CIE kasi yun yung isa sa mga ginawa po talaga yung partnerships or at least yung connections, network sa community po na yan. Then if I may add lang din po sa question ni Sir Gemma, important din po yung reach natin. Like what I said earlier, it takes a village to raise a child. Actually, sabi nga po ni Sir Ben before, it takes a country to raise a child. Kailangan po talaga natin ng mas maraming tao. Kaya po malaking factor po na nasa CSB Life yung inclusion module na yun. Because of course, as mentioned, everyone came from different backgrounds when they entered Benilde. And it's and yun nga po, we're hoping that eventually they'll get to grasp the culture of inclusion. So kaya po maganda po na magkaroon tayo ng reach eventually, kasi medyo mahirap po kasi if same people, kasi para umiikot lang po dun yung concept ng inclusion. So baka maging stagnant siya. That's why we need to reach other people. So siguro for example for other schools, so siguro pwede kayo magkaroon i-require niyo lahat ng student population to attend certain webinars, stuff like that. Maybe some of them won't listen, but eventually may makakuha tayo mga inclusion champions. That's what we call it in Benilde. They're the ones who help us, spread the word of inclusion in the community. So that's why malaking factor din po yung reach to reach our goal for an inclusive community. So yun na po na naalala ko lang.
Thank you, Ms. Nicky and Sir Martin. Sorry lang i-add yung sa nabanggit ni Sir Martin. Para sa mga nakapunta na sa office namin, meron kaming isang malaking pader doon na color yellow. Tapos ang nakasulat, Together Towards Inclusion. Kasi yun yung reality, hindi lang isang center, hindi lang isang tao ang magpupush for inclusion. Inclusion, dapat lahat tulong-tulong. Gaya ng nabanggit ni Sir Martin, takes a village. No, it takes a country to raise a child, raise a student. Totoo yun. Yun lang po, para sa mga non-Benildeans dito na gustong mag-set up sa sarili nilang institution ng similar sa Center for Inclusive Education. Tandaan ninyo na importanteng may kakampi. May inclusion champions kasi hindi nyo kayang mag-isa yan. Definitely hindi. Okay? Last question na, Miss Nicky at saka Sir Martin. And ito, surprise ulit, hindi ko binigay sa inyo beforehand. Personal question to. Despite everything, coming from a person na nakatrabaho nyo for the past almost 7 years, no? Despite everything, lahat ng hardships na pinagdaanan natin ni Benilde in general, bakit pinipili nyo pa rin araw-araw na maging inclusive champion? Bakit nyo pinipiling hindi mag-quit, hindi sukuan si Benilde in terms of inclusion?
Sige, for me, malaking factor. Sorry, medyo TMI po to. Ako po ay isang mama's boy. So pag meron pong mga parent po talaga na natutuwa, no, na parang may times na umiiyak for their child na finally meron akong hope, may chance yung anak ko. Malaking factor po yun. It's for them. It's for the community. It's for the population that's why yun siguro yung reason na kahit medyo mahirap siya talaga, big part of that is yung those who are in need of that, yung pag-include sa kanila kasi they experience a lot na growing up, no, ang dami ng rejections, ang dami ng bad things happen to them. So I guess it's about time to give them a chance, to give them a community that will embrace them. So I think that's what makes me, work until now. Medyo matagal na po ako sa CIE. So malaking factor po yun. Kasi parang may part of me rin po kasi talagang basta nakakatulong ako, nakaka-fulfill na siya. So may concept, may feeling kasi dun, may fulfillment kasi yung nakakatulong ka. Again, being a mama's boy, pag may mga parents po talagang natutuwa, na very grateful for what we're doing. Nagiging reason siya for me to fight pa rin hanggang sa, may reason to fight, parang ganun po.
Nescafe naman yung tanong, para saan ka gumigising? Ba't ka gumigising? Yung journey ko in Benilde, as was mentioned naman, from the very start, was an inclusion journey because I was with the School for the Deaf. And aside from the Working Student Program, which was the first inclusion program, if you look at it, ng Benilde, ang pumapangalawa is the Deaf Program. And I've been with Benilde for 22 years, since January of 2001. Admittedly, maraming beses na akong napagod sa inclusion, with the inclusion journey, no? Napagod dahil in the first few, at least the first decade, paulit-ulit na lang kami ng kaka-explain. Need for interpreter, the need to put, the deaf in a particular area, paying the interpreter correctly, and, on time, yung gano'n, no? Parang year in and year out, it's the same thing over and over again. Doon ako napapagod na paulit-ulit na kailangang mag-break down ng barriers. Kasi nag-iiba. Every year, nag-iiba ang tao na kausap. There are people who come in and the people who retire or who resign, who leave, no? But when bakit ba ako nagpapatuloy? Kasi kailangan pang magpatuloy kasi hindi pa automatic sa tao yung inclusion. Hindi ako nawala yung interpreter. Yung interpreter ba yung nawala o ako?
Interpreter po, Miss.
Interpreter na lost. Ayan na, okay. Thank you, Cherry. So parang I'm not being messianic. Hindi ako yung sagot sa inclusion concerns ng Benilde. Definitely not. Pero kasi may magagawa pa. May magagawa pa ako. Tapos siguro matigas lang din ulo ko. Siguro gusto ko rin pahirapan sarili ko. Dahil may magagawa pa, at kaya pa, may lakas pa ako, di tuloy lang. If it makes a difference, like Martin, siya naman mga magulang, ako for the students. If it makes a difference for one student, sige, fight. If it makes a difference for one family, sige, laban tayo. Ganon. No? If it affects one associate who does, if it affects one associate at madala niya ito sa labas ng Benilde, madala niya ito sa barangay niya, madala niya ito sa pamilya niya, okay, good, fine. Kahit isa lang. Kasi, and yun yung nasa isip ko, and then somebody told me, si Brother Dodo told me, our president said, that's actually very Lasallian. If it's just one, laban pa rin. So, yun, I guess, working in Benilde for 22 years and really getting to know the Lasallian mission has kind of ruined me in the way na ruined talaga. Hindi naman. Has affected me in a way na ganun, laban lang. Kasi kasi kailangan pa. Kasi marami pang kailangan gawin, marami pang tao yung pwedeng makinabang at matutulungan. So there, that's it.
Miss Nicky,
diba? But parang hindi ako, again, no, not messianic. And I know I cannot save the world. Definitely not. But that's it.
Miss Nicky, gaya nga ng nabanggit nyo, worth it lang talaga si Benilde. Miss Nicky, Sir Martin, thank you very much. Last words for the seminar. For the seminar, meron kayong gustong i-add or ipaalala sa amin about inclusion or pep talk or what?
Ako, may share na lang ako kasi parang na-mention ko to before na nag-talk ako dun sa mga students. Siguro yung lesson would be, it's never too late to be inclusive. Share ko lang, no, I came from an all-boys school back in high school, no, and it was, mga 2000 era. So medyo kailangan, like if you want to belong, parang kailangan mo maging, you want to do something na apparently hindi na pala siya tama. So nagkaroon ng times na I was excluding people, I was making fun of certain people, no. But eventually, no, you get to a point that you get to be mature, you get to see totoong pinagdaanan ng mga tao. So yun I know that was bad, but proud ako na I changed. So that's why lagi kong sinasabi na it's never too late to be inclusive. Kasi parang kahit bukas, kahit ngayon, after this, pwede ka na maging mabait sa mga tao na yan. Kasi yun it's never too late to be inclusive. Siguro yun yung parting words ko and tips siguro to the attendees who are here. Kasi malaking factor yun na it all starts sa atin within ourselves. Pag nagkaroon tayo ng change talaga, pag naging mas mature tayo, mas naging open tayo, you'll definitely be more inclusive. Kaya yan guys, never too late to be inclusive. So yun po.
Ako, I'm going to parang not water it down, no? But the most basic for me, just be kind to everyone. If you are a teacher, be kind to your students, be kind to your fellow teachers, be kind to your administrators. If you are a student, be kind to your fellow students, be kind to the adults of the community. Whether or not they are inside, they work inside the classroom. In Benilde, sabi namin, there was a time na we had a shirt. Everyone had a shirt from the security officer sa front gate all the way up to the president. And the shirt said, every child counts, every teacher matters. We are all formators. And the message there is, we are all Benildeans. Kahit na kung ano pa yung position mo or kung ano pa yung category mo, sector mo, student, adult, ganun. Just be kind And definitely you can't go wrong. In being kind, you will already be inclusive. Definitely. Kahit hirap kang isipin, parang inclusion na yan. Basta mabuti kang tao sa iba. Ano ka na nun? Inclusive ka na nun. Magiging mahirap siya. So, araw-araw, trabahuin mo na maging mabuti ka sa lahat ng tao. Work on it that you're kind. Every day, say a prayer that you can be kind kahit na it's very difficult. Yun. So it's a choice that you have. It's a decision that you will have to make every day. That you will be kind to everyone every day. And that's one big step closer to being an inclusive person, which is one big step closer to being an inclusive Philippines.
Sir Martin, Miss Nicky, thank you. Sobrang thank you very much dito sa time na ibinigay nyo sa pag-discuss ng anong Benildean inclusion, anong plans niya sa future, and of course, sharing your personal stories about inclusion. Malaking bagay ito. And again, salamat, and na-miss ko to. Sobrang na-miss ko to na ito yung ginagawa namin sa office dati, pre-pandemic times, habang kumakain ng chooks to go. Nakakamiss. Sana maulit natin to. Kailangan ko talaga siya.
Chooks to go.
Let me turn over to Miss Bea for the next things na gagawin. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Hi again. So thank you, Sir Gemma, Sir Martin, and Miss Nicky, and our audience. That was a really substantial and fruitful conversation. But before we end, I would like to invite again Sir Gemma to present the certificate of appreciation to our guest speakers and a quick photo op to wrap us up. Thank you.
Yes. Hi. Ako ulit. This certificate of appreciation is presented to Mr. Martin Cyrus Romero for sharing his expertise at the Beyond Borders Benildean Inclusion in the New Normal webinar on February 2, 2023. Signed by Erin Sophia Amante, Manager for External Affairs, Benildean Student Envoys, and yours truly, Jeremiah So Adriano, Inclusion Advocacy Unit Head, Center for Inclusive Education. Photo op.
All right, I'll be taking a screenshot. So just a moment. Okay, so in 3, 2, 1, Sir Martin and Sir Gemma, please smile for me. Okay, another cue. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next pangalan lang. Yon. Kay Miss Nicky naman. This certificate of appreciation is presented to Miss Nicky Templo Perez for sharing her expertise at the Beyond Borders Benildean Inclusion in the New Normal webinar on February 2, 2023. Signed by Erin Sophia Amante, Manager for External Affairs, Benildean Student Envoys, and yours truly, Jeremiah So Adriano, Inclusion Advocacy Unit Head, Center for Inclusive Education. And photo op.
Okay, Miss Nicky and Sir Gemma, in 3, 2, 1, please smile for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sige, to wrap, ako rin pala yung next, no? To wrap this thing up, again, thank you very much sa speakers, lalo na sa speakers natin. Sige, pinilit ko sila. Joke lang. Wala naman silang choice. Ka-opisina ko sila dati. And thank you sa mga pumunta. Gusto ko lang i-highlight yung non-Benildean sa pumunta. Malaking bagay yun sa amin sa pagpunta ninyo. Kasi nakikita namin na hindi lang within Benilde yung passion for inclusion. So, siguro I want to highlight several mga suki namin sa webinars, no. Of course, sina Miss Mona ng DWCC. Madala sila dito, and ever since I think way back in 2017 constant yung communication namin with them. Yun lang, nakakatuwa lang na yung sinimulan namin almost 7 years ago, kumakalat na siya. And maraming schools na ang mas nagiging inclusive and mas nagiging aware or mas nagiging conscious for this one. And ngayon, yung closing remarks ko, gusto kong i-address sa inyo as advocates. Educators man kayo or hindi, or fresh graduates kayo, or meron kayong kakilalang may learning need. Number one, define your inclusion. Nabanggit ni Sir Martin and ni Miss Nicky kanina, no? Na paradoxical ang inclusion. To quote Teacher Therese Bustos of the College of Education ng UP Diliman, how big is your all? Yun yung tanong niyo sa sarili ninyo. Kasi yun yung reality ng mundo. As much as we want to include everyone, to share ourselves to everyone, hindi siya realistic. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Define your inclusion. Number two, use the values of your institution as well as your own. Na-raise to or na-discuss to ni Sir Martin kanina during his time na nagde-discuss na sa Benilde, yung framework namin, values-based siya. Ginagamit namin yung Benildean inclusion values of respect, solidarity, equity, and diversity para mas maging inclusive. And of course, sa inyo, I'm addressing those who are not from Benilde na gusto ring mag-set up ng something like this na ginagawa namin. Use the values of your institution. Kasi it's easier kasi ideally nasa puso niyo na yun eh. No? And of course, bigyan niyo ng sarili niyo flavor, yung sarili niyong tawag dito values as a person. Kaya natanong ko rin sina Miss Nicky at Sir Martin kanina na tawag dito, ano yung sarili nilang kumbaga inclusion story, kasi lahat tayo may inclusion story. And doon lumalabas yung personal values natin in terms of inclusion. Next would be break the barriers to inclusion. Kung ano man yun. Iba-iba yung barriers to inclusion natin. Nagkataon for Benilde, we classified it to 3 categories. Yung administration, yung academics, and yung social. Sa inyo, sa kung ano mang institution kayo, ano yung barriers ninyo sa inclusion? Or siguro, sa bahay ninyo, ano yung barriers nyo sa inclusion? Gamitin nyo yung values ninyo to break those barriers para ma-achieve yung tunay na inclusion. And next would be dream to be irrelevant. Ito yung running joke namin sa Center for Inclusive Education, no? Na our ultimate goal, and sinabi na rin naman ni Ms. Nicky kanina, our ultimate goal ay mawalan ng trabaho. Pangarap namin masisante. Pangarap namin maging irrelevant. Kasi that means na isa puso na ng community yung pagiging inclusive. Gaya ng nabanggit ni Ms. Nicky kanina, sa lifetime ba namin yun? Baka hindi. Pero it's still our dream. No? And yun yung pinupush namin. And lastly, gaya ng nabanggit ni Ms. Nicky kanina, no? Mahirap pero worth it. Promise, hindi madali ang maging inclusive. Mag-build ng inclusive center for your institution. Actually, mahirap pa nga maging inclusive within your small community or baka nga sa household nyo lang. Pero it's all worth it. Very quick lang sharing. Kanina nung dinidiscuss ni Miss Nicky yung Benildean expressions, nag-chat agad ako kay Sir Martin. Sabi ko, kinilabutan ako. Kasi yung difference ng 2013 to 2021, nakakatuwa kasi isa pa, no, bakit mahirap ang inclusion work or advocating for inclusion? Hindi mo siya nararamdaman. Yung gratification sobrang tagal. Sa part nila, Sir Martin, kumbaga ang indication na tama yung ginagawa nila ay kapag pumapasa yung estudyante na under our care, kapag napapagraduate sila. So medyo matagal yun, no? Yung daily grind, yung bakit ka gumigising kada umaga, mahirap siya sagutin minsan, gaya rin ng nabanggit ni Miss Nicky. Pero at the end of the day, it's all worth it. Kaya nga, again, nung in-explain ni Miss Nicky na part na or naging categorically nabanggit na sa Benildean expressions yung inclusion, ang sarap sa feeling kasi yung work namin for the past 7 years ay nasa sa puso na at nasa DNA na ng bawat Benildiano. And sana sa inyo rin, sa institution ninyo or kung saan man kayo nag-advocate, sana eventually maipagpatuloy ninyo or maging champion kayo sa inclusion. Again, mahirap, pero at the end of the day, it's all worth it, promise. So yun, hindi ko na papatagal. I'm sorry, dami kong sinabi. Passionate lang about this one. Once again, thank you very much for attending. Let me call on Miss Bea ulit for final reminders. Thank you.
So thank you once again, Sir Gemma, for your warm closing remarks. Before we formally close this program, we would like to take a couple of minutes of your time to answer your feedback form. So kindly scan the QR code flashed on your screen and click the link via the chat box. Thank you. So once again, we would like to thank Sir Martz and Ms. Nicky for their meaningful discussions and inspiring messages to our participants. We would also like to thank the Center of Inclusive Education and the Benildean Student Envoys for making this webinar possible. Let us all give them a warm applause. So we would like to acknowledge our FSL interpreters, Sir John and Ms. Cherry, and the team behind this event. And of course, to our dear audience, we would also like to express our sincerest appreciation and gratitude to for your patience, understanding, and ultimately making time to join us for this afternoon. For the last time, this has been Bea, your host for today's webinar. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. Stay safe always, and may you have a happy Thursday.